Good morning, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with you this morning. What I'm going to do is to step through a number of different topics around AI policy and opportunities around AI. And so I'm going to leave some time at the end for some questions as well. Okay, so I kind of like to give some sort of key messages to let you know where I'm headed for today. So the messages I think that I'll touch on today is, there is a significant but maybe rather complex landscape of federal AI policies in the United States. It's much broader than just regulation. I think a lot of times when we talk about policies, AI policies, people sometimes think about regulation, but there's more to it than that. So we'll talk about that. There is a decent foundation for AI regulation in the United States, and certainly I think we have a good foundation to build on. And then we'll look at a little bit more specific, and particularly some of the things that we're thinking about here in Tennessee, and the importance of recognizing that AI is and will continue to be a workforce and economic disruptor. And so those who can leverage AI in their jobs are going to be the ones that will be able to thrive given that disruption. And then here again at Tennessee, we want UT to be a leader for the state as a whole in proactively navigating this AI transformation. So I'm going to dive into each of these points in a little bit more detail. And happy to discuss at the end. So let's think about the landscape of federal AI policies in the United States. As was mentioned, I spent 4 years in the White House and then 2 years prior to that at the National Science Foundation. And there's been a decent amount of progress made since 2018. And that policy progress takes on a lot of different forms. Certainly executive orders are important, R&D budget priorities, and so forth. You can see a list there. I want to give you some examples of some of these as I go forward. Just very quickly, if you try to plot all of the formal policies that are in place now in the United States around AI, this is how I would do it. So there was an executive order in 2019 on maintaining American leadership in AI. The OECD and the G20 signed off on some AI principles in the May-June of 2019 timeframe. NIST has been doing a lot of work on AI technical standards going back to 2019 when they issued a formal report on the federal engagement of around AI technical standards. There is a memo on how the U.S. should approach AI regulation. There's a second executive order on promoting the use of trustworthy AI in the federal government that was passed and signed in December of 2020. And then Congress, in their first legislation that really talks deeply about AI in January of 21, legislation was signed, came into play that it's called the National AI Initiative Act of 2020 and the AI in Government Act of 2020. GAO, it's an independent federal agency, but they also released their AI accountability framework for federal agencies in June of 21. Now, NIST has also been doing a lot of work in trustworthy AI, and so they released a report on AI bias in March 2022. There was a task force called the National AI Research Resource Task Force that I co-chaired. And so there was an interim report that was released in May of 22 about that. OSTP released Office of Science and Technology Policy in the White House, released an AI Bill of Rights in October of 2022. NIST released their AI risk management framework in January of 23. The final report of that National AI Research Resource Task Force was released in January of last year. And then finally, in October of last year, the executive order on safe and trustworthy AI was released. So I'll go into a little more detail on some of these here as we go forward. But the bottom line is that there is a fair amount of federal AI policies in the United States around AI. Certainly, there's much more to be done. And so when you think about AI policy, it's not just regulation. It's also about R&D and infrastructure for R&D, education and workforce, international engagement, and federal use of AI. So I like to categorize all of this landscape of AI policies into these 6 primary buckets. Now, time, we don't have time this morning to go through all of these, but I'll touch on a couple. Well, the ones on the left-hand side, I'll touch on those in a little bit more detail. So let's think about policies around AI R&D. Many people are not aware, but OSTP, together with the Office of Management and Budget, every year issue what's called a multi-agency research and development priorities memo. And this is a memo to the federal agencies that is typically short. It's maybe 3 to 5 or 6 pages. And it states in those pages what the agencies should prioritize. And then when the agencies write their budgets and plan their programs, they have to tie it back to this memo to demonstrate that they are following through on the administration's priorities. So this happens every year. And the most recent one, of course, was last year. And the very first topic that's listed in that multi-agency R&D priorities memo is AI. It talks about advancing trustworthy AI that protects people's rights and safety, and to harness that to accelerate the nation's progress. So this is an important memo. It's kind of an obscure memo that probably only those in the Beltway really pay attention to it, but it is important, again, for really defining what an administration's priorities are in R&D for that upcoming budget cycle. A lot of people wonder how that translates actually into budgets. And so there's a website called www.niderd.gov that tracks the AI R&D investments. And so every year they update this to show what the level of investment is in AI R&D. So currently, if you look at the R&D investments, including defense, they run, if you look all the way on the right-hand side, they run about $3 billion. That's the 24 request. And this is kind of the breakdown for that by agency. You see that NIH has the most. Now, obviously, their AI research is more applied. It's use-inspired AI for healthcare and medicine. And then the next biggest chunk is NSF, which is more foundational AI. You can see the breakdown there by other federal agencies as well. And so, it's an interesting question to say, well, how much spending is enough? I mean, how much do we need to invest in AI R&D? And there's an interesting report that came out by the National Security Commission on AI. It's been now almost 3 years since they released this report. This National Security Commission on AI was a congressionally mandated commission to investigate a lot of things around the nation's competitiveness as it relates to AI. And they released a very extensive report. It's been very well received, and a lot of the recommendations from that report have been acted on by Congress and the federal agencies. But in that report, they stated their opinion is that the U.S. should double their investments from a baseline of $1 billion in 2020 to reach $32 billion in 2026. And that would be a level similar to biomedical research. That was what they were targeting. So that would suggest then that the federal funding should be at least $8 billion in this current fiscal year, or FY24, and increase to $16 billion in FY 2025. So we're nowhere near that. You could argue as to whether or not the National Security Commission on AI had the right concept or opinions on what amount of funding should be there, but it's kind of flat right now, I think. Now, given that the agencies are told that they should be investing in AI R&D, there is a guide to help organize their funding so that, or their programs, so that they are executing on priority areas of AI R&D that the administration and the nation believes are most important. And so this is the National AI R&D Strategic Plan. Now, I had the benefit of leading the working group that created that first one in 2016. That was when I was working at NSF under the Obama administration. And then I oversaw the update of the 2019 one while I was in the White House, and then in the early updates to the 2023 version. These plans, frankly, have been fairly stable since the 2016 plan. Now they have 9 strategies that give sort of some broad, high-level guidance to agencies as they are working on their programs around AI, so that they're directing them in areas that the totality of the federal government thinks are important. So things like long-term investments in AI, responsible AI research, human AI collaboration, the ethical, legal, and societal implications of AI, safety and security, the importance of infrastructure and standards and benchmarks and workforce and so forth. And then partnerships and international collaboration have been added in the most recent 2 strategies. So agencies use this then to guide their programmatic activities. So let me jump now to a next policy area, which is in AI research infrastructure. A number of years ago, people started worrying about the extent to which the key advances in AI were being made by industry as opposed to academia. And so the AI Index report, which you may be familiar with, this is put out by Stanford and colleagues on an annual basis. They've been doing this for a few years. And they included this chart, which shows that the significant machine learning systems that have been developed by industry versus academia and other organizations flipped, so that prior to around 2015, most of those significant machine learning systems were being created by academia. And then, of course, it would make sense for actual products to be developed then by industry using those developments by academia. But now that's flipped since 2015, and significantly, industry is now where those cutting edge advances are happening. And people looked at this and said, it's great that we have a thriving industry, but it's not great that academia is no longer able to participate in the to the degree that seems like it ought to be as it relates to R&D advances. And so a lot of discussion around this recognized that one of the key limitations is the lack of computing infrastructure, computational infrastructure, to enable academics and even startup small companies to be able to participate in R&D to the extent that the large technology companies are. And so there was a call to action back in 2020 for what was called a National Research Cloud. And then that gathered force, gathered momentum, and as part of that National AI Initiative Act of 2020, Congress directed the establishment of a National AI Research Resource Task Force, or NAIR task force, to create a plan for how we would implement a resource infrastructure around computation to enable more of the R&D community across the United States to participate, given that so much of the advances these days do require much more computation and data and so forth. And so that task force was launched in June of 2021. I co-led that task force. And so as directed by Congress, 2 reports were issued. One was an interim report that was released in May of 2022. The final report was released in January this past year. And the real points that are raised in this implementation plan are the importance of spurring innovation, increasing the diversity of talent through having access to this kind of computational infrastructure so that we can improve capacity and advance trustworthy AI. And so this was well received. And so language from from Congress in a bipartisan, bicameral introduction of language to authorize the NAIR occurred in July of last year, called the Create AI Act. Now, of course, the funding for this is yet to be determined. The proposed budget for the NAIR was $2.6 billion over 6 years, and that was based on a careful analysis of what the need is across the nation for computation and data, and test beds, and education resources, and so forth, that can enable more of the R&D community to participate. So there was a kickoff. Once that final report came off, there was a kickoff discussion that the head of the NSF and the head of OSTP participated in to discuss the NAIR. So I mentioned the creation language, and then the agencies have now launched a NAIR pilot project in January of this past year, as directed by that most recent executive order on AI. So NSF is leading that NAIR pilot. There's an open call right now for information. There's an open call about getting access to the early resources through the pilot. So that's gaining momentum. We'll see whether or not it actually gets funded for the full NAIR resource, not just the pilot. So let me then go on to a third area, which is in the regulatory space. So we have something to build on here in the regulatory space, where we want to be able to modernize our governance and the technical standards for AI, and do that in a way that protects privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties. I think even though there's a lot of discussion around regulation and what it should look like and so forth, I think we do have a common foundation in that people agree that we need to foster trust and confidence in AI in order to realize its full potential. So it's about how do we create that trustworthy AI and make sure that it is trustworthy. And certainly public trust will only come, I think, if we have those technical standards and ability to manage risks around AI. So this is, I think, a foundation that most people agree on. There have been a number of actions around different aspects of this that have happened over the last few years. There's this executive order, the first one on AI back in February 2019. It included a lot of things, but one aspect of it was looking at the computation needed to democratize AI. It talked about the technical standards needed to develop trustworthy AI and so forth. Internationally, there's been work in this area since 2019. And there's some fundamental principles and actions that democracy should take in order to ensure that AI is used in a responsible and trustworthy manner. And so I happen to be the lead U.S. person that negotiated the final language of this AI recommendation that came out of the OECD back in May of 2019. And work has continued in the OECD, including through expert groups that have continued to advance policies in all of these areas, or thinking around policies. There's another executive order on promoting the use of trustworthy AI in the federal government that took a lot of the policies, frankly, or the recommendations from the OECD policy, and then turned this into something that the federal government, the U.S. federal government, should do in order to make sure that it itself is using AI in a trustworthy manner. There's also a regulatory memo that came out in November 2020 that it takes advantage of the regulatory agency infrastructure that the United States has, which is different from the EU. I think this is an advantage that the United States has, because we have regulatory agencies that have expertise in sectors like FDA, DOT. They have regulatory authorities over particular uses use domains, and certainly AI is relevant there. So this is really kind of a high level principle sort of document to think through how we can leverage that landscape of regulatory agencies in the United States to craft AI regulations. I've mentioned the National AI Initiative Act of 2020 that included a number of actions, some of which I've already mentioned. It has, three key goals of making sure the U.S. is leading the AI R&D in AI R&D. That it also, as a nation, that we're leading the world in the development and use of trustworthy AI, and that we're preparing the workforce for AI across the economy. And then the last goal was to coordinate all of these activities. And so to coordinate the activities, they created this National AI Initiative Office, which I was the founding director for. And this is really charged with overseeing those goals of the AI initiative. Another action that came out of that National AI Initiative Act of 2020 was this risk management framework from NIST that has now been released in its 1.0 form. And that is an approach that anybody can take when they're thinking about use cases of AI, how to think through risks associated with those use cases of AI, and then to map that into then how you measure potential problems, risks around those use cases, and then how do you manage and govern those as well. Now, certainly Congress has been thinking more specifically about how and what to regulate around AI. So last summer, Senator Schumer released a framework called the Safe Innovation Framework that is, again, very consistent with a lot of the thinking around AI, that it should be innovation forward. We want to make sure we can take good advantage of the benefits of AI, while at the same time making sure that it's done in a responsible way. And so we want to make sure that it maintains their national economic security, that AI systems are deployed in a transparent way so that people are accountable, and it's consistent with our values and our expectations for how AI will be used. And then finally, that it's not a black box, but it's something that's understandable, so that as it's used, we can sort of trust that we know how AI is making recommendations. There have been a number of insight, they call them insight forums and discussions to kind of dig into this. So we'll see where this leads. And then I mentioned the executive order, the most recent, the third AI executive order, the one that came out in October. This executive order is leveraging really that regulatory landscape that I talked about, where we have different agencies that have authorities over different sectors. And it's directing all of those agencies to develop guidelines for the use of AI within those various sectors. And it calls out a lot of specific topics and areas for all the federal agencies to get involved in. And so there are active initiatives right now at all of the agencies to really deliver on this executive order. Okay, so there's a lot of good things I think that are going on. It's not to say that there's still not a lot of work to do. I think that there is, but I think the process is kind of slow, but I think it is churning along, and we have a good foundation to build on. So now let me shift gears a little bit and think about what does this mean to an individual, and this is something we've been thinking a lot about here in my role in Tennessee, as the director of our AI Tennessee initiative. And so first is the recognition that AI absolutely is going to continue to be an economic and workforce disruptor. We did a study last summer. Actually, it was with Boston Consulting Group, and we asked them to look into the economic impact of AI, particularly for Tennessee, because we already know that AI is disrupting lots of industries, nearly every industry you can imagine, in a lot of different kinds of ways. And so the opportunity then is that obviously there's going to be a huge market in the future around AI, but it's also going to impact jobs. And so through this study, the estimate is around 500,000 jobs in Tennessee are going to be either augmented or replaced by AI. And I think most of those are on the augmented side, meaning that jobs you may have a new task within your overall job that is being automated by AI, but your entire job has many other tasks, not all of which are going to be automated by AI or replaced by AI. So the bottom line, though, is that every industry sector is going to be impacted by AI, and so we want to be able to leverage this transformation and not just react to it, and to do this in a way that helps us take advantage of these opportunities and make sure that the workforce is prepared for these opportunities. As part of that study, we also had BCG, Boston Consulting Group, to look at the 8 industry sectors that are particularly important to Tennessee. And so these are the 8 that you see here in this chart. The top row of this chart shows the national employment in terms of thousands of jobs in that industry. And then the middle row shows Tennessee's employment in the industry. And you can see it kind of tracks the national trends there as well. And then the bottom row shows funding to AI-related companies in each of those industries. And so the take-home message from this is that the expectation is that since AI R&D is being invested in all of these important industry sectors, that there will be new tools and products and ways of doing business in those sectors that will impact the way the jobs are being done. And so that's true for all of the sectors that are important to the nation, but certainly to Tennessee as well. And so most economic sectors then that are important to Tennessee are going to be impacted by AI. And, you can dig into each of these sectors and show how it's not just about, automating simple tasks of some sort, but there's really some key reasons economically why AI holds a lot of promise in each of these sectors. And I'm not going to go into detail here, but the point is, I think there's a lot of positives that can come from this, but it takes action. You can't really leverage these opportunities without doing something proactive to claim hold of those opportunities. Okay, so AI is and will continue to be an economic and workforce disruptor. When people see that 500,000 jobs are going to be impacted, there's a lot of concern that AI will take people's jobs away. But I think the right way to think about this is that those that can leverage AI in their jobs are going to be the ones who thrive. This is some data that I think is interesting that shows that over time, as an economy, the United States has done a good job of creating new jobs as technologies come along to change the nature of work. What this chart shows, if you look at the chart on the right, the light blue on the bottom of those bar charts are the occupations that existed in 1940 across a lot of industry sectors. I know the font's a little bit small, but like farming and health and cleaning services and sales and so forth. And then the dark blue at the top of the bars are the jobs that the occupations that did not exist in 1940. And so roughly 60% then of the workers are today in occupations that did not exist in 1940. And so what that means is that, over time, of course, we've been able to absorb the new technologies and create new jobs. Of course, the downside of that is if today you are, say, a truck driver, and tomorrow we have automated convoys of trucks, and your job is no longer needed, then even if there are open jobs, say, in nursing, you can't just turn in to a nurse overnight, you have to have training for that. And so we have to look ahead to see what jobs are going to be most impacted so that we can then make sure that people are prepared for that going forward. And this is a statement you hear a lot of people make, and I very firmly believe it, is that it's not about AI taking your job. It's about someone using AI that will take your job. And I think we're seeing this across, again, all of these sectors of the economy. This is data, again, that came from the BCG study we did last summer. We have the same 8 industry sectors here in the chart on the right, and then the colors of those icons correspond to the colors in the bar charts on the left. And the bottom line is that nationally, if you look at the count of the open job postings that require AI skills, it's gone up 19% it went up 19% for 2019 to 2022. In Tennessee, it's gone up 40%. And over that same time period, meaning there are more employers looking for people who have AI skills, but they're not looking just for computer scientists. They're looking for people who have AI skills across all of these industry sectors, like people who know about manufacturing and materials and also know about AI, or someone that knows healthcare but also knows about AI in that context. And so it's yes, there is a need for more computer scientists, say in the IT space, but these other sectors are also requiring more and more expertise in AI as well. And you could dig into this in a lot of detail in terms of particular kinds of jobs that will be impacted. This is a really busy slide. The take-home message is, if you look down the middle, there are some example roles, and then the dots, they're slightly to the right, talk about the degree to which a particular role is going to be impacted by AI. And you can see everything from fast food counter workers to registered nurses to laborers are impacted to some degree. And so it, again, just cries out for the importance of education and skilling of everyone across all of these sectors. Okay, and so finally, let me just say a few words about what we're doing as it relates to our AI Tennessee initiative. What we're trying to do here at the University of Tennessee is to lead our state in proactively navigating this AI transformation. And we're doing this through this initiative, AI Tennessee initiative, that has 5 key pillars. Now you see there at the top, I capitalized TENN to emphasize that the T is for transdisciplinary. It's not just, again, it's not about computer scientists and mathematicians, but it's about how AI is transforming every sector, every discipline of study. And so what we want to do is to advance an education and innovation or research initiative across all of these sectors that are impacted by AI, and to do this across the state. So our goal is for Tennessee to become a national and global leader in the AI economy, the data-intensive knowledge economy. And to do this by leveraging our unique strengths and opportunities, advancing cutting-edge research, preparing students with the skills that they need, and then doing this in partnership with industry and organizations and institutions across the state. So you can see we have those 5 key pillars: research, education, infrastructure, partnerships, and outreach and engagement. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I could go into a lot of detail on what we're doing in each of these pillars. I'll give you just a little example. For instance, in the research area, we have a number of faculty clusters that we're building out. So we're hiring faculty in 7 key areas. You can see 6 of them listed there in the lower left quadrant. And 2 of those are all about AI, foundational AI. And the other 4 include AI for things like future mobility or climate smart agriculture, precision health, and so forth. So we're in the process now of hiring in these areas. Again, to emphasize the transdisciplinary nature of things, we have AI that's threaded through so much of what we're doing. It's not unique to us, of course, but for instance, last summer, the NSF director came to Knoxville to kick off a couple of NSF funded activities. One of them is a Materials Research Science and Engineering Center. Another is a Future Mobility Initiative. And both of these have AI deeply threaded through them. So again, it's not just about the foundations of AI, but it's about how we can advance AI in the context of a given discipline. So that transdisciplinary importance. We're investing in the infrastructure. We've built out some of our GPU capabilities on campus through some new NVIDIA H100s. And we're starting new courses. Last fall, we started a new AI 101, which is about teaching literacy, AI literacy to all of our students, not just those that are in a technical field, but those who are in any discipline to learn the fundamentals of AI. This semester, we're teaching the 101 again, and also the 401 and 501 versions of that AI literacy. This just gives you a quick snapshot of what's taught in that course. It's about the foundations of AI and the ethics around it, what data means. And then it gives students a hands-on experiences with using different kinds of AI, machine learning, deep learning, computer vision, natural language processing, and so forth, using no-code tools. So they don't have to learn how to program in this class. I mean, they aren't taught programming in this class. It's very much about understanding what AI is, broadly speaking, what it can do, what it can't do, the ethics around it, and so forth, so that then students can begin to see how it might play a role in whatever course of study that they're engaged in. This is taught, by the way, by our new College of Emerging and Collaborative Studies that started last summer here at UT. I mentioned the 401, 501 class starting this semester. And then we're also working on a new applied AI undergraduate major that's under development now in that new College of Emerging and Collaborative Studies. And we're on course to have that offered this fall. I mean, a lot of approvals have to be received, but we're on course to get that done by this fall. And so this will be an interdisciplinary sort of degree where students can combine their main area of interest, like supply chain management, for instance, but then also have a heavy dose of AI applied to that discipline. And they could do this, students can custom design their degrees around AI in the discipline that they choose, so that now they're prepared for how the nature of work is changing in all of the disciplines going forward.